Earlier this week, Congresswoman Sheila Cherfilus-McCormick was indicted. The charges are related to her alleged role in stealing and laundering millions of dollars in disaster funds through her family's healthcare company and then using that money to aid her run for Congress in 2021. In July of that year, the indictment alleges that Cherfilus-McCormick's family healthcare company was accidentally overpaid to the tune of $5 million for a federally funded COVID-19 vaccination staffing contract. Instead of returning the misappropriated funds, federal prosecutors claim, quote, a substantial portion of the money was used for her campaign and, quote, for the personal benefit of the defendants. Attorney General Pam Bondi said in a statement that using disaster relief funds for personal gain, quote, is a particularly selfish, cynical crime. She added no one is above the law, least of all powerful people who rob taxpayers for personal gain. Republican Congressman Greg Steube, a fellow Floridian, filed a resolution to expel Cherfilus-McCormick. As of now, the Florida Democrat has not indicated she has any intention of resigning. The Congresswoman has maintained her innocence, called the indictment a sham, and added that she's looking forward to her day in court. Joining Forbes True Crime is criminal defense attorney Skye Lazaro to break down the indictment. Hi everybody, I'm Brittany Lewis, one of the hosts of Forbes True Crime. Joining me now is criminal defense attorney Skye Lazaro. Skye, thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
It's always really shocking when a sitting member of Congress is indicted, and the allegations in this particular indictment are pretty egregious. We're talking about Florida Democrat Sheila Cherfilus-McCormick. She's been accused of stealing and laundering $5 million from FEMA through her family's healthcare company, and then using that money in part to fund her congressional campaign. You hear the allegations, you see the indictment. What's your reaction?
You know, at first glance, this is a very serious crime, obviously, for anyone, especially sitting member of Congress, to be accused of stealing, misappropriating, anything related to federal funds is really problematic and really serious. Additionally, she's charged with conspiracy to commit some tax crimes as well. She has denied the allegations. And when you look at indictments really are, you know, the government has gone before a grand jury. The defense is not part of that process, so they don't get to cross-examine anybody or present any of their own defenses. So really, it's just the government going to the grand jury saying, here's what we have. Do you think it's enough for us to file, you know, formal charges against her?
And if I'm not mistaken, it seems like this all stems from this massive overpayment by FEMA, right? FEMA accidentally overpays Cherfilus-McCormick's family healthcare company $5 million. I mean, when is it a crime to be overpaid? I mean, is it a crime when you realize, hey, that should not be in the bank account here, and then you don't report it? I mean, what does that look like?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, and there's a number of ways that these come about. It could have been completely accidental. You know, there was a mistake on the government's part, on FEMA's part. They issued a payment maybe they shouldn't have. When she became aware of that payment, or the company became aware of that payment, they should have notified FEMA and said, hey, you overpaid us. We need to send it back. There appears, you know, which would be a valid defense, even if she were indicted on that, to say, hey, look, it was accidental. You know, the money's still there. We're going to send it back to you. Kind of no harm, no foul. Based on what the government's alleging in this case, is there was some additional steps taken on behalf of the company and the, you know, her herself in funneling this money elsewhere. So either they, you know, didn't realize it, which, you know, could be a theory that her defense team takes on. She has maintained her innocence in this case and said she didn't do it. But, you know, if that money's been traced to other places, and then not only was it wrongfully given to them, you know, if they actually misappropriated the money on top of it, that becomes a little bit harder to defend, because then they're not even using the money for its intended use.
The DOJ really laid out this step-by-step plan for this scheme, and these are all allegations. She's innocent until proven guilty. Cherfilus-McCormick says that she's looking forward to fighting these allegations. She's innocent, and that she's looking forward to her day in court. But I do want to talk about these step by step, and if you could weigh in on what you think the most serious allegation is. First step being that this FEMA overpayment allegedly was not paid back. Then the money was allegedly laundered. Then that money was funneled to friends and family, who then used that money to donate to her campaign, and this would constitute as illegal straw donor contributions. Or the final step, she allegedly conspired with her accountant to file a false federal tax return. In your opinion here, what do you think is the most serious allegation?
I mean, they're all bad. I think probably the worst facts in this case, or the worst allegations, are that she took the money, gave it to friends and family, or misappropriated it to friends and family, so it wasn't used for its intended use. And then they turned around and donated that money back to her campaign. I think when you're looking at what's the most damaging, what's a judge going to look at as the most egregious conduct in this, I believe it's going to be that. Tax crimes can take a number of different takes. People can do the best they can, and things get categorized the wrong way, and maybe you owe the IRS some penalties, things like that. Those types of things can be worked through. But I think when you're looking at someone who is an elected official, who's in a position of really public trust, right? And now she's taken government taxpayer money for her own benefit, as they're alleging. Now, whether or not they can prove she did it, is another question for trial. But that type of behavior, I think, is going to be viewed as the most damaging and egregious by a court.
And she faces a slew of charges related to theft of government funds, money laundering, making and receiving straw donor contributions, as well as conspiring to file a false federal tax return. She was also slapped, in addition, with multiple conspiracy charges. When you're looking at all of these charges, what is the hardest to overcome?
Factually, I think the hardest for her to overcome is going to be probably the laundering, if they can trace the money and the use of the money. I think those are going to be, at least based on what the government's alleging, those are going to be the most difficult to explain away, either to a jury or to a judge, if in fact what the government has is as good as what they're saying.
And typically when you're looking at financial crimes, is the evidence usually super cut and dry? And is that really hard to overcome, because essentially there's a money trail that can usually be traced back to you?
Yes and no. They reopened this investigation over the summer. So they've been, putting a bunch of time and resources into this. My guess is the government has got a money trail. They're going to have a forensic accounting type expert who can explain how this money came into her account, where it went to from there, and trace each one of those transactions. The flip side of that is the defense is probably also going to have a forensic accountant expert to try to, perhaps debunk those allegations. I've done a number of these financial type crimes, and they're not always, even though it seems like it would be easy, you just follow the money, which, can be true. But a lot goes into this, and a lot of times it's not quite as simple as it appears at first glance.
I know that, and as you said, that an indictment is the prosecutor's time to tell their side of the story. There's that famous phrase, you can indict a ham sandwich. I mean, they can paint the facts as they want, lay out the case as they want, and the defense isn't able to respond. Yet, as a defense attorney, when you're looking at the indictment, when you're looking at the allegations, what do you think is the biggest weakness in the case then?
I think they're going to have to show intent. And I think sometimes showing intent is the most difficult part in these cases. Even if you can satisfy the underlying facts and you can show the money, her friends and family may have donated to her campaign from other accounts. It may not be so simple as money was transferred to them or paid to them from these FEMA funds, and then that exact account made the contribution. So they're going to have to show that she intended to wrongfully obtained these funds. She intended to misuse them. She intended those funds to go to friends and family so that they could pay it back to her. So attacking that sometimes is probably the easiest way to attack the government's case if everything else, lines up the way we think. Now, if those people make contributions from personal accounts and they can't trace that FEMA money all the way to a personal account, maybe those campaign contributions were, something separate, and these family members were paid, for other services, or they actually did work that was consistent with what the funds should have been used for.
We are 10 months into President Trump's second term, and when you're looking at Trump 2.0, critics and legal experts alike have argued that President Trump has weaponized the DOJ to go after his political opponents, including former FBI Director James Comey, as well as New York Attorney General Letitia James. And Cherfilus-McCormick herself questioned the timing of this indictment. She said it's curious and clearly meant to distract from far more pressing national issues. Does that give you insight into what her defense could possibly be?
I believe so. I think they're going to focus really focus in on what was happening that sparked this investigation. Who was in charge of it? Was there communication? Because a lot of times the defense can get communication between DOJ prosecutors and investigators and whoever is investigating these crimes, and really looking at that. And there has been a lot of allegations about the weaponization under this administration of political opponents or people that aren't following in line with what the administration wants. And so I think they're going to really try to politicize this. Based on her statements, my guess is they're going to try to make this a political issue more than focusing on the facts of the crime or what happened there. I mean, this administration also commissioned a separate group to look into what the prior administration did to Republicans. And, we've seen just recently in Utah, we had a COVID-19 case that dealt with an individual or a doctor here and his nurse who were giving out COVID-19 cards and not giving them the vaccine. Midway through trial, the Department of Justice in Washington, D.C., directed them to dismiss the case because it was, not politically aligned with what this administration ran on. And so, they kind of want it both ways. They want to say what you did to us was bad, but we're going to do the same thing. And we're seeing more and more of that, I think, these days.
And Attorney General Pam Bondi, she said in a statement that the allegations in this case, using disaster funds for personal gain, is a, quote, particularly selfish, cynical crime. And the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Florida said the indictment shows that no one's above the law and, quote, public money belongs to the American people. When FEMA funds are diverted for personal or political gain, it erodes trust and harms us all. Strong words from both the federal prosecutor as well as the attorney general. As a defense attorney there, do you think that indicates, or if this was your client, would that indicate to you that they are going to try to throw the book at her?
I think they're going to go after her very aggressively based on their statements. Even as a defense attorney, as an officer of the court, I agree with those statements. The law should apply equally to everyone. If in fact she was diverting these funds for personal gain and she is, an elected official in a position of special trust, that is very problematic. We do not want that type of behavior to go unchecked for obvious reasons. But I think that also gives a lot of insight into, how aggressive the government is going to be in this case. I don't think this is going to be a slap on the wrist type of case, like it's okay, pay it back and we'll all move on. I think they're probably, and because she's a Democrat and not aligned with them, they're probably going to want to make an example of her.
And to that point, yeah, it doesn't seem like a slap on the wrist because the DOJ did point out that she faces 53 years if convicted on all of these charges. But as of now, she's maintaining her innocence. She has not indicated she's resigning at all. She's saying that she's looking forward to her day in court. So what specifically are you looking out for next?
I think really what we'll have to see as this case unfolds is as the defense gets the discovery in this case and all the investigative materials and forensic accounting. I would expect to see some pretrial litigation, maybe some, motions to suppress or challenging some of this. Also, probably trying to get some of these communications that I'd mentioned before, if they exist. And I don't think this is going to happen fast. None of these cases move through the system quickly. So I do think it will probably take a significant period of time if this case goes to trial to get there. But I think in the interim, you're going to see a lot of political rhetoric come from the defense. We saw this with Santos. I think he was the last person to face any sort of charges. And they, Congress came out then and said, hey, do we really want to punish people who have been charged where they haven't been to trial and adjudicated? They are presumed innocent. So they may try to remove her, but I think based on precedent, unless she resigns, I think she's probably going to maintain her seat. It's going to make it more difficult. She has stepped down from some congressional committees and things like that. And I think her effectiveness will be, varied depending on what the issues are and the distraction of this. But I think this case is probably going to take some time to get through.
Well, I appreciate your legal expertise here and breaking it down. And as we see developments on this and other cases, I hope you can come back on and join me. Skye Lazaro, thank you so much for the time.
Thank you.